Dracula. I bid you welcome.
An aura of death, laced with grace and a peculiar beauty, surrounds vampires. They repulse us and at the same time draw us like moths to a flickering flame.
A Swiss geologist and a survey team encountered two ape-like beasts, a male and a female, which were 5 feet tall and walked upright like humans.
The Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert, the fossil people who had once reigned over half of Africa. Little chain survivors of prehistoric man in Africa, the Bushmen boast the longest pedigree in the world.
From the boundaries of the universe to the depth of your soul, embark on a journey through the unknown and unexplained as we explore mysteries, magic, and miracles. Hello and welcome. This is Patrick McNee. Tonight, we'll take a look at the mysteries of the animal world. And then we'll visit a primitive culture still thriving today. But our first story takes us to the backdrop of Bram Stoker's ingenious portrayal of the legendary Count Dracula. A creature veiled in darkness, a legend who drinks the blood of the living and who vanishes before the first light of day. Count Dracula, outrageously elegant and utterly dangerous. An aura of death, laced with grace and a peculiar beauty, surrounds vampires. They repulse us and at the same time draw us like moths to a flickering flame. Our first visual encounter with a vampire was in the 1922 silent film Nosferatu. Filling us with dread and pity, this vampire inspired many future filmmakers to create the ultimate Prince of Darkness. Bram Stoker's Gothic novel, Dracula, gave birth to this noble vampire. Stoker's inspiration to write Dracula is almost as mysterious as the bloodthirsty hero himself. One night in 1890, Stoker woke from a terrible dream, and it is after this dream that he felt compelled to write the novel. We visited Whitby, a charming old-fashioned little town in England. It is here where Stoker stayed during his creation of Count Dracula, intertwining the myths of vampires from the Middle Ages and the Gothic features of Whitby into his book. From his room in the Royal Hotel, Bram Stoker got his first glimpse of the view that inspired him to use Whitby as backdrop for his hero's adventures. From this window, he could see directly across the harbour to East Cliff. And there, on the top of the East Cliff, is the ruined abbey. The stark stone arches, etched against the sky, became the extravagant residence for Count Dracula. At the foot of the hill, Church Street joins Henrietta Street. From here, 199 steps lead to St. Mary's Parish Church with its old graveyard. It is in this graveyard, on a bench, where the body of Dracula's first victim was found. In the same cemetery is a grave where George Cannon, a man who committed suicide, was buried. It turns out that Count Dracula, apart from assuming the shape of a wolf or bat, as well as human form, had taken refuge for part of his stay in Whitby in the unhallowed grave of the suicide. Stoker's later residence in Whitby became number 7 Crescent Avenue, and in the novel, Count Dracula's lawyer also lives at 7 Crescent Avenue. 3 chapters of the novel are set in Whitby, and since Stoker's stay there, the town has changed little. Bram Stoker, Dracula, and Whitby have become inseparable. Stoker chose Prince Vladraculaen, the infamous Dark Age ruler, as the model for Count Dracula's character. Prince Vladraculaen was born in 1431. His reign was savage, cruel, and consisted of the worst crimes ever committed in the history of the world.
He used to impale his victims, and it is rumored that he would, or on occasion, he would drink blood, which would give him the power over his enemy.
The physical pleasure that pain and torture to his victims gave him, his insatiable thirst for blood and aristocratic background, earned him the legendary name, Prince of Darkness.
He was considered a tyrant by many, but he was a hero to his countrymen because he defeated the Turks. Even to this day, in Transylvania, Romania, he's still a hero.
After Vladracula's death, the coffin with his body inside disappeared. Rumors spread that Vladracula still roamed the silent and black hills of Romania, surviving all attempts to destroy him. This myth gave birth to vampires and eventually led to the fabulous Count Dracula. Being a vampire, Dracula has lived for hundreds of years. This has enabled him to build a vast fortune and considerable knowledge. Combined with his charm and great flair for dressing well, he has become a popular and seductive host to his unsuspecting guests.
I am Dracula. I bid you welcome.
One aspect of Bram Stoker's Dracula is that he is one of the sexiest creatures ever to grace the pages of a Gothic novel. A combination of immortality, half-animal qualities, and blue blood running through his veins make him a desirable yet unmistakably lethal playboy. Dracula's residence is always a remote castle, surrounded by a forest and an eerie twilight atmosphere that prevails day and night. Dracula's peculiar daytime resting place is a coffin, lined with the finest silk. Usually found in the bowels of his castle, his coffin requires a place of absolute security, for he is at his most vulnerable while inside it.
And a lot of the new legend that's coming through in vampire lore is coming from Anne Rice. The vampires that are very seductive, that are still pretty human, that are not these creeping, crawling, dead things. The love, the sex, the drama.
After 10 days of stay in Whitby, Count Dracula decides to leave. 50 coffins are the strange cargo on the train that departs from Whitby that afternoon. In one of those coffins, Dracula. Still today, within the walls of his castle, horror rules, and behind his bewitching smile, imminent danger lurks. But beneath this cloud of evil, a certain sadness surrounds him, trapped in the body of death, with a strange desire for affection. Count Dracula's existence remains an endless and tragic fantasy. With millions of identified species in the animal world today, there are still a number of zoological oddities which surprise scientists every year. Is it possible there are animals roaming the earth right now that we have yet to encounter?
In the wilds of Tasmania, there's rumored to live a very peculiar creature. It is described as part wolf, part tiger, part hyena, and part kangaroo. Zoologists dismiss the stories of this beast as nothing more than a myth created by locals seeking to get their names in the paper. But scientists didn't always feel that way, because at one time such a creature did exist. Known as a Tasmanian tiger for obvious reasons, it had the face of a wolf, the body of a hyena, and a pouch like a kangaroo. Sadly, the last of the species died in captivity in 1936. But if we are to believe eyewitnesses who claim to have recently photographed the bizarre beast, it is still alive today, safely hidden from man and avoiding extinction in the unexplored wilderness.
If a living Tasmanian tiger is ever found, it won't be the first time a supposedly extinct animal is discovered alive. Case in point, Shortly after the last captive Tasmanian tiger died, a strange-looking fish was caught off the coast of South Africa. It was subsequently sold to a woman who suspected that what she'd purchased was no ordinary animal.
She recognized this as something quite unusual, quite spectacular, and located the most eminent ichthyologist in South Africa, who immediately knew what it was because these things have been described as fossils.
It was a coelacanth, a species which was supposed to have died out over 70 million years earlier.
The dinosaurs became extinct 65 million years ago, so that even they didn't even make it that far.
How could a creature which had been around since the age of the dinosaur go completely unnoticed for so long? Was the ignorance of this prehistoric animal's existence an isolated case, or are there other species on the planet which science has overlooked? Dr. Stewart believes there are, and points to our vast oceans as the place where many could be found.
There will be doubtless more fossil fishes, more unknown fishes discovered in the future than there will be of any of the land-dwelling animals. How many there are out there? Well, you can only be exact once they're discovered, but one can only guess that there's several thousand.
Included in that large number is a previously unknown shark, which was discovered in recent years off Hawaii.
It's called the megamouth, and this is no small animal. And it's really quite fascinating that something that large could be living in our oceans, undetected by scientists for centuries.
But what else is lurking down there? Could there be something more sinister and threatening than just unknown fish and sharks? Throughout history, sailors have written about their vessels being attacked by sea serpents, giant squids, and other denizens of the deep. The similarity in the tales and their sheer number tend to make one believe they have some basis in truth. Now that the oceans are being systematically explored, will we find evidence that these mythological beasts actually exist? Some believe we already have been given a preview of one of the ocean's best-kept secrets. This is the decaying carcass of an enormous marine animal which was caught in the nets of a Japanese fishing vessel. This is the fossilized skeleton of a plesiosaur, a marine dinosaur which is generally believed to have died off with its better-known land-based cousins. Notice the similarities in the two animals. Both have small heads, long necks, and flippers. Is it possible that these are the remains of a recently deceased dinosaur? Unfortunately, we will never know because due to the unbearable stench of the rotting carcass, the fishermen threw it overboard before scientists could examine the amazing find. In Africa, tales of living dinosaurs have been rumored for centuries. Some believe they escaped extinction because, in prehistoric times, they lived in tropical climates. These regions remained unaffected by the Ice Age, thought to have caused the demise of other dinosaurs. Today's elephant-sized dinosaurs are said to live in a remote area of the Congo, in the caves and swamps of a nearly inaccessible lake. In a different jungle half a world away, zoologist David C. Oren is on the verge of finding another supposedly extinct animal. He reportedly has proof that the giant ground sloth, a beast which stood over 6 feet tall and weighed more than 400 pounds, is alive and well and living in the Amazon. Oren has identified the animal's tracks and possibly some of its blood. But because he has not been able to produce an actual specimen, many doubt that the sloth exists. Hundreds of miles north and several decades earlier, another scientist faced similar doubts. In 1920, along the Venezuela-Colombia border, a Swiss geologist and a survey team encountered two ape-like beasts, a male and a female, which were 5 feet tall and walked upright like humans. The male was shot and killed after he and his mate made motions to attack the explorers. This photograph is the only record of the find because, sadly, the rest of the evidence was lost when the party's boat capsized. Though the picture shows something quite unusual because there was no additional data, the discovery was ultimately dismissed. But skeptics abound when it comes to stories of animals which have yet to be discovered. Keep in mind, not so long ago, there were many who doubted the existence of the panda and the mountain gorilla. At one time, the species were thought to be mythological monsters, but today they are officially recognized members of the animal kingdom.
Is it conceivable that the likes of such myths as Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster will also, one day, be recognized by scientists? It was several million years before man knew about the coelacanth, so I suppose only time will tell.
In rare instances, time does stand still. At least it appeared that way when Susan O'Leary visited a primitive tribe in South Africa, a culture preserved through time.
Africa conjures up legends as easily as her winds raise dust devils in winter. And sometimes these legends take root and survive hundreds, even thousands of years. One such legend comes from southern Africa. Somewhere in the vastness of all this land lives a lost tribe. And we've found them, the Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert, the fossil people who had once reigned over half of Africa. Little chain survivors of prehistoric man in Africa, the Bushmen boast the longest pedigree in the world. The oldest fossils found and identified as Bushman ancestors dated from the Middle or Late Stone Age. The Florisbad Man is a name given to a skull found near Bloemfontein in southern Africa. It was dated at 44,000 years and found to be that of a prehistoric Bushman. I visited a small Bushman village in the Kalahari Desert, far away from civilization, where time is measured only by the sun and the moon. The Bushmen are little people, barely 5 feet, and often called the children of the desert. Against the odds of wild beasts and the unforgiving desert, they survive. They live in family groups, most of the time in complete isolation, quite unaware that there are other people in the world. Their nights are spent telling stories of hunts long ago, of romances and quarrels, of births and deaths. Their language has a peculiar ancient ring to it, a click-clack sound, echoing the primitive chanting of Africa. Rock paintings drawn by ancestors can still be seen today.
Most of the paintings were done a couple of thousand years ago.
The Bushman's existence evolves around nature, and they believe that humans and animals are close in life and spirit. Death to them is just the beginning of another life form, not necessarily human.
The human could go from his human person, or his spirit could go into an animal form. So often you'll find that the rock paintings are associated with animals.
The Bushmen have lived the same way for hundreds of years, guided solely by their primal instinct. They still hunt for food using a bow and arrow. Silent and deadly, it's the only way to kill in the quiet desert. They sleep on the ground, outside, around a campfire. The night sounds of the desert, their lullaby. What are they making over here with the beads? The women take ostrich eggs and use the shells to make beads. They take the beads to create jewelry, a craft they've practiced for hundreds of years. In the world where the Bushmen live, things like crime, punishment, laws, even rulers don't exist. They pay homage to the gods, who they believe control every aspect of their lives. The Bushmen led us to a place so spectacular, it takes your breath away. The Congo Caves, where their ancestors used to live thousands of years ago.
As far as about 20, 30,000 years ago, up to about 400 years ago.
Evidence of the Stone Age Bushmen is a chilling reality.
Also see the smoke traces on the side walls over there, so it was quite obvious that this area here was still used by the Bushmen.
Behind the stillness, Africa keeps her mysteries securely under wraps, as if she knows how civilization could change it all. And change it, we have. Give up all this? Well, we might get bored with the simplicity or go deaf from the quietness of the desert. But to transport the Bushmen to this modern reality, would they even survive?
Myths and legends feed our imagination, tantalizing tales that open the doors to fantasy and intrigue. But in every corner of the world today, if we just look with an open mind, we can find mysterious truths just as compelling, maybe more so. This is Patrick McNee. Join me next time with more mysteries, magic, and miracles.